One would think that there'd be a ton of things to perhaps speak about when you take a look at the the MTBPS, the midterm budget policy statement that Finance Minister Tito Mboweni needs to release then tomorrow. But Dr Adrian Saville, Chief Executive of Cannon Asset Managers, who joins us on the line, says there are perhaps 5 key issues that should be flagged for MTBPS and should be a key focal point. Adrian Saville, thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's perhaps chat about those 5 elements. The first one, you say, is the low economic growth, which indeed is a very critical factor.
Thanks for having me on the show. Economic growth is probably front and center for the simple reason that this is a key metric, I think, put down by ratings agencies, by capital allocators, both domestic and international investors, and I think the public at large puts this down as a primary barometer. And economic growth in South Africa has been missing in action for the better part of a decade.
Yeah, and I suppose trying to figure out a way to grow that just comes from actual reforms and actually doing stuff and putting it down on the table. But you can't necessarily do that with the tax buoyancy we currently have.
Yeah, tax buoyancy has been a real challenge in recent times. Tax buoyancy refers to the fact that when the economy grows, you expect tax revenue to grow with the economy. And in the last couple of years, buoyancy has been sagging. There has been, interestingly, just in the last 6 months, a healthy recovery in that tax buoyancy. I think that's one to watch. The recent recovery is helpful, but we want to see, I think, confirming evidence that is back in place.
And it doesn't help, of course, that SARS is going through the issues it currently is, right, which would certainly affect, it would certainly affect things. With that in mind, then government debt in South Africa becomes an issue. Last year, I was just speaking about it earlier, last year we had the MTBPS paint a very bleak picture of where South Africa's debt levels could go for government. But then a better picture was painted in February. What are your thoughts this time around?
Well, in part, the government debt issue is a function of the slow economic growth because government debt is really referenced relative to the size of the economy. And if you've got budget deficits that are running at 3.5% in an economy that's growing at 1%, then your debt to GDP or debt to income ratio keeps growing. And we're getting worryingly close to the 60% debt to GDP, where the sort of orange light goes on for ratings agencies and investors. I think slightly better economic growth and certainly contained budget deficit will help. That said, there's a hidden element, and that hidden element is that alongside the raw debt to GDP number of around 55%, there's another 15% that we can attribute to state-owned enterprises. So we're actually already over the 60% debt to GDP number. But what we want to see is containment of that and what is constantly referred to as fiscal consolidation.
Yeah, and very difficult. I mean, you actually put out here as well that government employment accounts for 25% of total South Africa's employment, which compares to countries such as Chile at 15% and Turkey at 12%. So government consumption as a percentage of GDP close to 25%, and the largest component of which is the public sector wage bill. So Tito probably needs to come back and chat to us exactly about how government has tried to contain those costs. But you spoke about those state-owned entities. That's going to come full circle back, and we need to show that the turnaround strategies of some of these entities is indeed working.
Yeah, because I think you can't look past the fact that getting these large, important state-owned enterprises back into solid financial health, effective operating states, all of that is critical to getting a coordinated and sustainable economic recovery back on track. So there's a number of large SOEs that have not just financial deficits, but also operating deficits. And I think we need to see evidence of not just recovery, but consistent messaging about how this recovery will be sustained, and that we can anticipate healthy SOEs to be part of the landscape in the near future.
You also speak about then, as point number 5, as there being 3 social issues that we certainly need to deal with, one of them being land.
Yeah, I think so. Arabella, we're going into an election year. It would surprise me if we don't see commentary around these critical social issues. And to our mind at Canon, there's 3 issues that really stand out. The one is the education and skills gap or deficit, the low level of health delivery relative to health expenditure, and then this glaring land inequality that remains unaddressed. So I think those are 3 issues that you can expect to be referenced in the statement.
Yeah. Your final hopes then for the MTBPS, key takeout points, and perhaps then also let's lead on to the investment summit. Why not?
I think the key issue here is about consistent, clear messaging to remove as much uncertainty as possible, especially around issues that are quite murky and certainly emotive, vocative. Expropriation without compensation is a leading example. So just clear, consistent messaging that removes as much certainty and points to the way in which the promise will be delivered.
Well, Dr. Adrian Saville, I clearly hope that the message is heard and is put forward. Chief Executive of Canon Asset Managers there, as we talk about the 5 key issues flagged for the MTBPS, the midterm budget policy statement to be announced by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni tomorrow.